morning.
Good morning, Sophia. All right, we are starting a little bit early. So, Sophia, you have Ed de la Cara, and he is the clinical or the
Director of Sports Medicine for SmartTools.
Director of Sports Medicine for SmartTools. But what did Nick just say? He said he was going to do the product stuff, and you were going to do the
do all the clinical and any questions regarding to programming, research, anything like that should go to me.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. Sorry. So, all right. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast, a podcast to promote and improve your practice as an athletic trainer. Today I have Nicholas Colossi with SmartTools. He's the president and founder of SmartTools. They have both IAA STM tools and courses, and also what we're focusing on here is the BFR or blood flow restriction tools. And so they've just got a new Generation 3 fully automated cuff that either just came out or is about to come out. And then it's an interesting time with the trainings, because now with everything having to be online, we're going to have to discuss those as well. So again, we're talking about SmartTools, the products and the trainings, and how we're making that more accessible for athletic trainers in the athletic training room. I am your host, Jeremy Jackson. I've got Joel Ludke from Athletic Training Chat, and then my coworker Sophia Amata is also joining us here because she's the one that's most interested in taking the course, the certification. And so hopefully we get all of our questions answered so we can really bring this home to our school, to our athletes, and make it a better practice for them. And then also joining is the clinical or education director, Ed de la Cara, and he's going to start us off. We're going to talk about some of the different clinical aspects, which are some of the questions that Sophia had as well. So this is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/smarttools. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/smarttools. Those are all have the show notes and links and anything and some of the resources that Nick said he'd give me there at the end. All right. So since we're going to start with Ed, Sophia, you had some questions about the frequency and programming and things like that. And so, Ed, if you will, start us off with just the overview of blood flow restriction, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. So blood flow restriction training, or BFR, to me is the ultimate biohack. Going through as an undergrad in exercise physiology, what we were trained and what we were taught and what was in the textbooks was that you had to use high intensity load, damage tissue, give it enough rest, and the body will repair. And that's how strength happens if you do it 2 to 3 times a week for 12 to 16 weeks. I think pretty much any exercise phys major would say that that's pretty much what's taught. But we have found something else. That was really frustrating for me as an athletic trainer, having an athlete come in the athletic training room, and the coach is like, how much longer till we get back? In the back of my mind, I'm saying, man, this second-degree hamstring strain, to get this back to the capacity before this got injured, it's probably going to take me 6 to 8 weeks, but I don't have that time period. I need to get this thing strong, and realistically, I probably needed something like 12 to 16 weeks, and they're coming back earlier. And it probably is why it leads to the epidemiological fact that most injuries in athletes are the primary cause is previous injury, because they never were able to get a chance to get back to their true capacity. So what BFR does is it allows your body and tricks your body into thinking it's doing high intensity exercise when it's not. You're able to use your normal rehab, your TheraBand, your resistance tubing, your body weight exercise, reduce blood flow to the limbs, and get effects of strength and hypertrophy in a third or a quarter of the time, depending on if it's strength or size. So BFR is the intermittent occlusion of both venous and arterial blood flow while at rest or during exercise in order to get an adaptative effect.
Go ahead, Sophia.
Sorry, I muted my microphone. My dogs are barking like crazy right now. So you were talking about all the benefits, that someone would get from using BFR. Sounds like you would use it from someone just coming out of injury and someone just training to get stronger. Is this correct?
Yeah, anytime that you need strength or hypertrophy or aerobic capacity training or general fitness, you can use BFR. It can either be a standalone when loads have to be low, like in a rehabilitation setting, in the elderly, somebody that can't lift what we would classify as a heavy load training, 65 to 90% of their 1 rep max. But it can also be used in conjunction, like we use it with guys getting ready for the NFL Combine. We use it for people in the middle of their NBA or NHL season, or other times when if I do heavy load, I cause muscle damage. If I cause muscle damage, their torque and their fatigue is going to be too high to perform the next day. We avoid all that with BFR, but we still get the effects of high intensity training.
Okay. So then how early would you say you would use BFR with someone coming out of surgery, for example, with a ACL injury?
Yeah, so ACLs, it depends really on the age and if there's any risk factors associated with that individual. But in a normal athletic training room, we have young, healthy individuals with no cardiovascular issues, no blood thickening issues, that we can start like the next day. We can start literally right away to reduce the atrophy. And in fact, if I knew somebody was going to have ACL surgery, I would start them with BFR 4 weeks earlier if I could. And the reason is your body can get used to that reduction in blood flow. And so you don't have as much reactive oxygen species damage or reperfusion injury during the tourniquet time of surgery itself. So if I was doing prehab for somebody prior to ACL, I would start it before, and then I would start before, let them have their surgery, and then the day after, I would get going right away to return them to play as soon as possible.
Sweet. So, I mean, you were talking about the younger athletes are pretty healthy. They usually do not have any cardiovascular issues. Is there like an assessment that you go through with someone to decide if they are if they would benefit from using BFR?
Well, anytime that somebody is going to be needing strength or hypertrophy, they can benefit. In a situation where it's post-surgical, I mean, they're going to have probably disuse atrophy leading up to that surgery, because it's very rare that somebody has surgery the day of or the next day after that injury. We have a full screening, health history. You got to evaluate to make sure that there is no pre-existing clotting mechanisms. We still have to do our clinical examination, but 9 out of 10 times somebody is going to be cleared for BFR. Where we have to be careful immediately post-surgical, as we all know as rehab professionals, people have an increased clot risk of about 100% post-extremity surgery. So it's the one thing that we just have to be careful with, that, hey, if somebody comes in and they have a high hematocrit levels for whatever reason, it could be a female soccer player that's on birth control. She has high hematocrit levels. Her blood is a little bit more viscous. I might wait a week or two before we get started. It really is individualized, just like every rehab program should be. To me, there is no, hey, cookie cutter program. I do this, 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 and this. It's based on their functional return to play and where they're at, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And so we have to keep into consideration other things, but for the most part, we clear all those things out quick and we get them started right away. And there's numerous studies on ACLs with faster return, getting size back right away. Unlike myself, I was a Division I wrestler, tore my ACL, PCL, and LCL. And until about 3 years ago when I discovered BFR, that was 25 years ago, I tore my knee up. my leg was still hypertrophied from my good leg, even though I train, I CrossFit, I do stuff every day. Until I was able to use BFR, I can catch tissue size up very, very quickly. So yeah, we do our normal training. Screening, we make sure everything is good to go, and we get after it.
Let's go back and talk about the prehab just a little bit, because I haven't ever heard anybody using, of course I'm not an expert with BFR, but I haven't heard anybody using it beforehand to help get the kind of prep the body for that lower blood flow. Talk to me just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's some techniques that we use that we call ischemic preconditioning. And where it was really discovered was prior to organ replacement. You know, we cut off blood flow to an organ for a long period of time, tissue's going to die, right? I mean, that's the definition of myocardial infarct. Cut off blood flow, heart tissue dies. Well, when you have surgery and you're going to be under a tourniquet for hours at a time, tissue distal to that tourniquet will get damaged. And a lot of that damage is due to the reactive oxygen species, perfusion, reperfusion that I mentioned before. You use BFR, your body starts to get used to that hypoxic event. Just like if I go travel to Denver right now and I'm living in Dallas, Texas, and I'm not used to that hypoxic environment, it takes me a little while for my body to get used to it. There's adaptation effect that occurs within the first couple of weeks for my body to then be able to utilize a lower oxygen concentration. Same thing here. We can cut off blood flow to that limb, which will then allow that body to adapt, deal better with the reactive oxygen species, just be prepared. And in addition, now you make the tissue stronger. I mean, we've been doing prehab and rehab for a long time, right? Getting people ready for that surgery. Well, this not only gets the tissue stronger and ready and bigger in order to prepare for the atrophy that's, going to occur, but it also prepares it physiologically for the tourniquet itself and that hypoxic environment for however long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of tourniquet use. It's a very, very cool, very active versus when I tore my ACL, it was, hey, we got to wait till the swelling is down. We'll see you in 6 weeks. And I'm sitting there on crutches, non-weight bearing, and my leg that was, I was pretty reasonable athlete at that time, shrunk to essentially nothing before I even had that surgery. Not to mention the psychological damage that occurs when you're training for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You're with your teammates, and I was the top captain of the team, and I was a leader, and then all of a sudden there goes practice, there goes film, there goes, you're no longer training in the weight room, you're no longer a part of the group because you're isolated, and there's a huge psychological component. And when you can take high level athletes and you can train them using light loads, but feels like it's really, really hard, and you work up a sweat and you don't walk out of there going, I want to do anymore. There's a huge psychological component to getting better faster because you feel like you're actually training versus what a lot of times when patients come in my clinic now, they've been down the street and using a TheraBand to do shoulder exercises, but they can snatch 205 pounds. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. We need to tax the tissue. We need to make sure that your body is adapting and it needs higher intensity to do it. But if the tissue can't tolerate it, then we've got to use lower intensity loads, but use BFR so your body can adapt. It's the ultimate biohack.
Yeah, I've used the Delphi units at one of the workshops, and so the thing was to do 70 push-ups, and so I had one of the units on each arm or a cuff on each arm, whatever it is, and it was like just about impossible to do those push-ups. And so like, normally I could do 70 push-ups, maybe not like straight in a row, but I could do them with just a few breaks. But man, it was brutal. Like I have firsthand, experience, not post-op, but just the intensity of the workload greatly increases with those things. So
absolutely. I mean, you think about what's really happening. If I put a cuff on my limb and I am now reducing the amount of blood flow into my arm, right away, it's a hypoxic environment, right? So you're automatically not providing the tissue with oxygen that it would normally use to metabolize ATP and let that muscle do the work it needs to do. So now I automatically reduce that. Well, what happens when that occurs is that your lactate, your metabolites go through the roof. And because the cuff is on, now that pressure no longer allows any of those metabolites that are accumulating. I tell my patients, it's kind of like the car, driving at 10 or 15 miles an hour. It still has exhaust. There's still byproducts of converting gas to an energy form in order for that car to move. Same thing here. The blood's going in, it's limited. It's like I'm up in Colorado again and I don't have enough oxygen. But the key is that you have a pressure that no longer allows any of those metabolites to go back into the system. It creates a more acidic environment, especially with hydrogen ion, lactate, and now that pre-fatigues type 1 fibers. Well, if I pre-fatigue a type 1 fiber, the only thing I have left is a type 2. And type 2s are the ones that adapt for size and strength. Type 1s, you can work those all day with a light load. They're not going to change. Go look at a marathon runner. They're thin, even though they stress their bodies. They're primarily going to be using type 1s because it's aerobic. It's not going to happen. They're not going to be big and thick. Compare that to a sprinter that is accumulating lactate, that's using anaerobic metabolism. Those guys are using type 2s, and that's why they get thick and they get strong and they get muscular. So now I'm blocking all that metabolite. Well, people think of lactate as lactic acid, but it's not. Lactate is a buffer. Lactate reduces the time to fatigue. It's used as an energy source. It gets funneled into cells, and it also leaves that limb, goes to the liver, and causes sugar production, so more glucose can then go to the working muscle. You cut that off, now I have no oxygen going in, or a limited amount of oxygen, and I don't have lactate converting to sugar to go feed the muscle. You get tired. Your body says, whoa, I'm way tired. I must be doing high intensity exercise right now. So what I better do is release growth hormone, because I'm going to have to repair that high intensity exercise because there's going to be muscle damage. So growth hormone gets produced. Growth hormone goes to the area within combination of vitamin C and other things, helps collagen formation in order to repair the tissue. Goes to the growth hormone goes to the liver. The liver then makes insulin growth factor. And now we've got a repair process going on. But guess what? Because you're using light loads, there's no damage. Or if there is, it's so insignificant. So now you're just basically creating an environment where I'm not causing any muscle damage. My cells are swelling, and I'm able to get the mechanism for strength and hypertrophy to increase.
One of the things that we've started using is the Compex units. And so like the Compex or the Mark Pro for helping getting rid of soreness. So if I use BFR on somebody's surgically repaired knee, then can I turn around and use the Compex or the Mark Pro to help get rid of that soreness, or is that counterproductive?
When we think about what is the soreness from, I mean, it's a secondary marker of muscle damage, right? So if we get sore from it and we want to try to reduce that soreness, it's fine. But what I would do is do it with the cuffs on in a protocol that we use was called cellular swelling. So the two reasons that I would want somebody, if I'm thinking, okay, I've got soreness, that equates to typically secondary damage. Okay, so if I'm saying I want people to overcome that damage, what do I want my body to do to repair that damage? It's one thing to make somebody feel better. Like I can make somebody feel better. And my athletes used to come in the athletic training room all the time. Will you rub my calf? Will you rub my leg? We've all been there, right? And it drives us insane. You're like, I'm not a massage therapist. There's massage therapists on staff. There's massage therapists down the street. If I want the body to physiologically adapt to demand and you have damage, I want to drive growth hormone. That's what I want to do. Because if I can drive growth hormone and give you some antioxidant at the same time, your repair process in combination with meditation and with sleep and with proper macronutrients and proper micronutrients, getting people to move a little bit through that soreness, they're going to repair. So I'm going to use BFR in combination with a stim unit, and you're going to drive growth hormone and you're going to drive muscle protein synthesis without exercise, just through the contraction of the muscle itself with the complex. But because you have cuffs on, you get something called a cellular swelling effect. Remember, there's nowhere, I've got that cuff on my limb, there's nowhere for that swelling to go. So what happens? Extracellular fluid starts to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. Well, our bodies love homeostasis. I mean, our bodies are always searching for homeostasis. And so what happens? Pressure on the outside of the cell gets too high, it shuttles fluid into the cell. Now that muscle cell grows. When that muscle cell grows, research shows that your body starts to think that that muscle cell is going to pop like a water balloon. Well, what do we have to do to a cell that's going through apoptosis? We have to replace it. That's muscle protein synthesis. The cool thing with BFR, though, is your body thinks that you're going to break it, but you don't. It swells and swells and swells. No muscle damage associated with it. So you get muscle protein synthesis to grow new muscle. You get growth hormone because you're driving your body to think that you're starting to cause damage. And you get way more other factors, vascular endothelial growth factor, and a little bit of RO, reactive oxygen species, which is a good thing. Just a ton of different effects. But you're basically, your body thinks that you're doing higher intensity exercise that you're doing. You're not causing muscle damage. Your body goes, I got to repair that because it doesn't know any different. And voila, in 2 weeks, you are starting to see hypertrophy that would normally take 16 weeks or at least 12 to 16 weeks. And you're seeing strength between 2 and 4 weeks, which would normally take, according to ACSM, true strength, 12 to 16 weeks as well.
All right, I want to ask about the level 1 and the level 2 trainings you have, but Joel, Sophia, do you guys have any other questions about the repair stuff? Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, just one, kind of coming back to your initial example of like the second degree hamstring, and I think you kind of just got into it a little bit with the hypertrophy. I haven't delved into the research on it, but in terms of like showing with BFR, like true tissue healing occurring, to potentially, hopefully get someone back quicker than that 6 to 8 week, to call it a track athlete. Is there anything out there on that? Has that been done, or is basically kind of what you said, what is out there and what we can rely upon?
Yeah, there's tons of research in healthy rehabilitation state, post-surgical. I mean, we're looking at over 800 studies now. I mean, it's overwhelming, the validation and reliability of what we're doing. If you're using the proper type of cuff, you're using correct pressures, and you program in a mindful manner, you're going to get an outcome. I mean, it's shown over and over and over again. And what's really cool about BFR studies, at least my geeky PhD hat comes on when I see this stuff, is that most BFR studies are done with the control being the same as the subject. Meaning, I've got a cuff on one limb, I don't have a cuff on the other limb. I do the same exact protocol, and I can be able to compare what happens one limb to the other. This limb with BFR gets bigger and stronger. This limb does not. I mean, you don't get really much better than that with research. And so there's plenty of studies to demonstrate. I see in the clinic, because I see patients all day, every day, besides this deal going on right now in our world. But, and if you're watching this, sometime in the future, is that we're going through the pandemic right now, so clinics are kind of closed. We're just starting to reopen now. But the how fast people get back compared to when I was dealing with an Achilles tendinopathy or a patellar tendinopathy or a plantar fasciitis, or these conditions that would normally take a while because you're waiting for the tissue to improve the capacity, is off the hook. Plus, you're able to train somebody in a way that they feel like they're an athlete still. They feel like, I'm actually working, and I can't quantify what that is, but you just feel it and you know it, and people look forward to training. And They're feeling like they're actually working out versus I'm going to rehab, I'm going to go see my trainer, I'm going to, whatever it is.
Sophia, Sophia, hey, do you have anything before we jump into the level 1, level 2 differences?
No.
All right. So again, you guys are kind of on the edge of announcing the level 1, level 2. So can y'all talk to us a little bit about what we would expect by taking level 1 and then what we would expect to come in level 2?
Sure. Yeah. Level 1 is basically starting from scratch. Like, how do we put a cuff on? How do we inflate it? Why should I choose certain types of cuffs? What is the research around programming? What's the research around rehab? It's primarily a rehab-based, clinical-based setting, although we get a mixture of a lot of different types of professionals in there: strength and conditioning, athletic training, physical therapy, chiropractic. So you're going to learn basically like you don't know anything. And I do that on purpose, and it's mostly hands-on. I mean, I could talk about this stuff. I could talk about the research with so many studies. We could go all day, basically. I could probably go for a few days if we want to talk about the different mechanisms that are proposed and, what hormones are happening. And, we can do a lot of stuff. But instead, because so many people have never had the cuffs on or used with an athlete, I put the emphasis on getting the cuffs on people so they understand like what it's about. So typically in my class, and we have a lot of instructors, and I know everybody teaches a little bit differently, but by about 11 o'clock, if we started at 8 a.m., the rest of the day is going to be about hands-on workshop because, to me, philosophy is fine, background is fine. Yes, we have to understand that. You have to understand safety and indications and contraindications, but you also have to experience how to put a cuff on somebody confidently and feel good about it.
Sorry, I know you're about to continue there, but that's one of my favorite things is to kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about and then learn about it. Because if you just give me all the theory, then I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But okay, well, I've had the cuff on. I know the idea, I've done the stop the bleed training, so I know a tourniquet, you want to put it up high and it should be really tight. And, so I have an idea. So now let's work through the process now that I actually have an idea. So I really appreciate, again, I haven't gone through the training yet, but I really appreciate that style is we're going to give you some and then some, just kind of mixing up the two. So, all right, so go ahead and continue, Ed.
Yeah, sure. And then after, so level 2, I'm currently writing. It's almost done. It will be available live, but what we're seeing in the educational market is that most people don't want to give up a full weekend anymore. I'm old. I don't want to say when I graduated from, undergrad. It's been a long time. Back in the day, people would take training Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get all their continuing education done. We all love going to NATA because all 24 units are taken care of for the year. I don't have to worry about anything else. And, we drink a lot. And we see our buddies. Like, everybody loves going to NATA. Raise your hand if that's true. Everybody knows if you're an athletic trainer, that's what we do. We wear khakis, we wear polos, and we drink a lot at NATA and get all of our credits. But a typical clinician nowadays doesn't want to do that. They don't want to give up 2 days in their weekend because then all of a sudden they're now back into the clinic on Monday, and we're sensitive to that. So our level 2 will be all online because everything that we've done in level 1, which will be a prereq, you'll have all the programming. You'll know what the contraindications are. You'll know how to put the cuff on. You'll know how to inflate it. You'll know how to do all these things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be live. And so that's how I'm writing it. Now, if somebody wants to do a combo, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday we do level 1, Sunday we do level 2, I think, I'm going to make it so that way we can do it. But we'll have to do that in a gym because level 2 is all about performance. What do I do with an athlete pre-workout or pre-competition? What do I do with that hamstring strain that is not quite ready, but I've got BFR techniques that I can get people through that game without causing more damage and perform at a high level? What do we do after training? What do I do to prepare for the combine to get my bench press, my squat, my sprint, my vertical jump better? What do I do for the marathon runner that's getting ready for the Boston and has been running and needs to do some cross training? So I'm going to take a bunch of different types of athletes and be like, this is how you apply BFR to them: pre-event, during training, post-event, combination training in combo with whatever, their basketball season. So really like in-season training to reduce the amount of atrophy that occurs over the course of a long season, like with Major League Baseball or NHL or any of these types of sports that are so long, they don't get a chance to really train at high intensities enough to maintain muscle mass through the season. And then by the time the off season's on, now they got to go and gain 10 or 15 pounds. How nice would it be for them to get into the off season and they only lost 1 or 2 pounds comparatively. And now by the time the next season comes, they're even better than they were prior to going into the previous season. So that's my goal for level 2. And that's how I'm going to program it. It's going to be kick-ass, by the way. It is really cool stuff.
That'll be exciting to see. Again, Sophia was the one that was looking at taking the course, but then I think it was right about the same time as all the COVID-19 stuff, and we were the spring break, I believe, and so she's hopefully gonna take it in October, and I think the one right there in Dallas with you, I guess, and so hopefully we can also order the cuffs at the same time with the new budget money. And so I know Mike Hopper just commented that he's excited about the cuffs that he's supposed to be getting this summer from you guys. And so let's talk just a little bit more about the cuffs. Sophia asked a question about the width of the cuff. Are all of your cuffs the same width? Because I know when I was watching some of the videos on your website, there's some that you can like inflate and then walk away, or with the new ones, like I think they stay and they automatically adjust. So talk to me about the cuff width and what that looks like for SmartTools.
Sure. Well, so the research is very clear that the best practice right now is to use a wider cuff, wider than 5 centimeters. So our cuffs are a bit wider than 5 centimeters for sure. The lower extremity, the cuffs you typically use on the legs are just slightly wider than the cuffs on the upper extremity on purpose because the legs are bigger and you need more pressure in order to occlude the arterial flow. So the key and the recommendation is to make sure that the cuff is long enough to get all the way around and overlap, so that way you can trap those metabolites I was alluding to before. If the cuff isn't overlapping and there's gap, now you're not trapping the metabolites. Lactate can leave. You're not going to be able to get limb occlusion pressure, which is the way that we establish how much pressure you need to safely and effectively train. The new cuffs will use a automatic pump. So you'll plug it in, you set what pressure you want, and it'll automatically inflate. You detach it on purpose. It's one of the things that differentiates us is that the first cuff that was hit the market was not detachable. And so what a lot of athletic trainers and strength and conditioning folks would say is you've got all these straps and hoses around and it gets in the way and you got to wear a backpack and you can't jump in the pool, and you really don't want a $6,000 unit for one unit on an athlete and then being training on the field. Nobody wanted that. So we made ours so you can detach the cuff from the pump and then you can train, push a sled, do the things that you want to do either on the field or in the rehab clinic or in the strength and conditioning facility.
So then what would you say would be the recommended frequency and duration of a treatment?
Depends what you're doing. So just like any other training, if you have a goal of increasing somebody's aerobic capacity measured by VO2 max, then typically I'm going to want to train somebody You can do it a couple of different ways. You can train multiple times a day. Remember, there's no damage done. So I can train somebody in the morning and I can train somebody in the afternoon. And if I stick to my rep and set scheme, they're not going to cause any muscle damage. So I can do multiple training sessions. So if I'm like trying to get somebody back to the field very quickly and they're not participating yet, I would probably train them twice a day. For aerobic capacity, you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes of very light, like walking, or it's pretty low intensity to get adaptation. One specific study that was pretty amazing was they used Division I basketball players. They did 3 weeks of walk training, 15 minutes, 3 times a week. And they saw an 11% increase in VO2 by the end of those 6 weeks. Very, very low heart rate. And they used a heart rate reserve as a measure of intensity. You can either use heart rate reserve or you can use VO2, whichever one you have. Heart rate reserve is an easy calculation, so that's what we typically treat. In my clinic, I use VO2 because I have a fancy machine to do that. So if you're trying to train aerobically and you're trying to get them back quickly, you're going to train them a couple times a day, which would not be abnormal in the athletic training room, but would be very abnormal in a typical clinical setting where either insurance is paying for it or the person's paying out of pocket for it. If you're trying to get strength and hypertrophy, you can do those types of as well. Like if you're in a rush to get somebody back, you can train them twice a day. There's been numerous studies looking at, hey, if I train twice a day, can I get faster results? And the answer is yes. In a normal training rehab, like in my clinic, where people are coming in 2 or 3 times a week, it's perfect, because 2 to 3 times a week has been shown to be as effective for strength and hypertrophy over the long run, like once you get to 4, 5, 6 weeks. So you can do multiple training sessions a day for like 3 weeks. And then after that, switch to 2 to 3 times a week in infinitum as you're trying to get somebody fitter, bigger, stronger, or rehabbing from an injury. So to answer your question, I know I kind of sound like Stuart McGill when I say it depends, but it depends. It depends on where you're at. But in the normal rehab setting, 2 to 3 times a week has been shown as effective as 5 times a week. So most of my people, when they're not in really acute pain, are twice a week. In the clinic, I would expect, in an ATR, athletic training room, I would expect they're going to be coming in every day or twice a day. A lot of my patients also rent the cuffs for me or buy their own cuffs, and they do some of the training at home so they don't have to come into the clinic all the time. And our cuffs are so affordable that people have zero problem doing them. Like right now, I'm doing telehealth with people doing BFR. Why? They don't have any equipment at home. They don't have barbells. They don't have heavy weights. They can use body weight exercise to mimic high intensity exercise and gain strength and hypertrophy within 2 to 4 weeks. Why wouldn't we use cuffs in that scenario with somebody that is eligible? So, it depends. And I train everybody on ways that I approach it and ways to be able to use it, whether it's rehab or performance or a combination of both.
All right, Ed, I know you have to get in just a second. Last question I think I have for you is, in a high school athletic training room, what do you see as the most effective use of smart cuffs?
High school athletic training room. I used to be in a high school athletic trainer, and I just, my heart goes out to those saints that are in that environment, because typically they're way understaffed. They have way too many athletes. They have parents and they have athletic directors, and there's so many different things that are involved. It's really, really hard. And I haven't been all honesty, I haven't been in a high school athletic training room in a while for good reason, because of all that. It's so hard of an environment. I think I'm just going to think through this, how I would do this. Now your consent goes beyond just your athlete. Now you got to get consent from the parents. So you're going to have a conversation with the parent. You're going to have to rule out your contraindications. And now I would have multiple sets of cuffs where I could send somebody on a walk with the cuffs on. I could have 2 or 3 people on tables doing their rehab exercises. And, I was a frontline medic in the Army, and I would be, when I was in the emergency department, a lot of times with people that the physicians didn't want to see over and over and over again, they would do something to them that was necessary, but a little uncomfortable, like putting a catheter in or, doing a femoral line or something along those lines. Like, for example, when I got cauliflower ear wrestling in college, my doctor got tired of me coming in to get it drained. So he stopped using lidocaine. You do that a few times and you're like, I'm not going back in there. I don't care about the cauliflower ear. So the reason I say that is, we all have athletes that come in that don't want to work very hard. They want you to rub on them. They want you to do electric stim and ice. They don't want to do the active rehab. I would do the active rehab and I'm going to be like, listen, this is what we need to do to get back. And it's going to weed out the people that are serious about coming in the athletic training room versus the ones that just want to get a little attention and rub. And I know that's kind of probably a little harsh, but I don't think very many high school athletic trainers would argue with me that that is real life in most scenarios, unless the coaches and athletic director are really good at monitoring. So I would use it just like I use it, in the pro level or high level universities or wherever I'm working in the clinic. But it is difficult. I mean, there's no way, like you said, doing your push-ups is hard. It's work. And so it's going to weed out those people that don't want to work as hard as you would like them to. And I think that would be a good thing.
All right. You two have anything else for Ed before he has to jump off?
No, that was it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. If there's any questions, just feel free to shoot them my way. I'd be happy to answer them. Appreciate what you guys are doing, getting information out to everybody that kind of needs it. Because so many times as athletic trainers, we're sitting on this island and we're searching for information and help, and we're undervalued and we're underpaid and we don't have enough equipment and we don't have enough hands. And so whatever we can do to help them in the trenches is awesome. So I appreciate you all.
All right. So Ed Lacara is a DC, also athletic trainer, PhD. So he's going to sign off, and then we're going to go over to Nick talking about more about the products rather than the clinical side. So Ed, thanks. And actually, I'm going to connect with you. I think I'd like to just share your story of becoming an athletic trainer sometime, because going from Army medic to athletic trainer and then moving on to DC and still working with athletes. So I think it'd be an interesting story just to share sometime. So I'll try and get in touch with you soon about that.
Okay, sounds good. Happy to have another conversation. It'd be great.
All right, thank you, sir.
See you guys. Be safe.
All right, Nick. My number one question is the Gen 3, the fully automatic smart tool. So one of the reasons that I was hesitant to ever look at the other smart cuffs was because you had to use the stethoscope and the audiometer and whatever it was, and you had to continually monitor that yourself, rather than, like Ed was just saying, in the high school athletic training room, I'm going to put this on the kid, then I'm going to go over here, I'm going to evaluate somebody else, I'm going to take care of the kid that just missed a baseball and split his face open while I'm doing all that, right? So talk to me just a little bit about the smart cuffs, the products, why you would pick one versus the other.
Sure. Yeah, so kind of just taking a step back as far as when we started and why we started. We started with our Gen 1 cuff in 2017. It was, for lack of better terms, it was a piece of crap. I wasn't very happy with it. It was a multi-chambered bladder system, which we quickly learned wasn't the most evidence-based system that you can get. The pressure system, it dispersed the pressure is completely different, because before we really started to delve into BFR, I was using it myself. I had a couple different brands, some single chamber bladder systems, some multi-chamber. When I say single and multi, when I say a single chamber bladder system is like a blood pressure cuff, right? So it's just one inflatable bladder. It's not segmented at all. In a multi-chambered system, it's segmented. So with the single chamber bladder system, so like a blood pressure cuff, a Delphi unit, smart cuffs, you can occlude the artery to measure what's called a limb occlusion pressure, what Ed was alluding to. With a multi-chambered system, you can't do that because there's little crevices in between the chambers which allow blood to escape, so you can't find a limb occlusion pressure, so it's not objective. So our first cuff was a multi-chamber bladder system. And our customers, because we started with ISTM, so we had decent sized customer base, and they were, you know, mix of physical therapists, chiropractors, athletic trainers. They hated it. They did not like it. They were kind of like, this isn't really my thing. This is not what I was expecting. So probably after about a month and a half, we pivoted and created our Gen 2. It cost a lot of money, but it needed to be done. So we were just like, yeah, we need to fix this fast. So that's when the Gen 2 came out, about, like I said, about 2 months after we came out their Gen 1. And then we've been using that ever since. That's our Gen 2 product, our current product that we currently sell. You know, we use 5 different size cuff. They're all 4 inches wide. And, you know, Ed talked about it before, you know, minimizing the limb occlusion pressure. It's over 5 centimeters. So we started with that. We've been rolling with that. It's been great. You know, we use an external Doppler to find LOP. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can do it with pulse ox. You can do the stethoscope. You can do with, you know, an external Doppler. We chose an external Doppler because that's what the research has shown to be just as accurate as the computerized systems. There's drawbacks to that, of course. It is somewhat clunky. You can't do it on yourself. It's near impossible. I tried, and I designed the damn thing, and I still can't do it. So I mean, there's a lot of drawbacks. But it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's relatively easy to use if you're using it on somebody else. But it takes practice, it takes time, it takes education. So then the Gen 3 came about. We started to develop this about a year and a half ago. 2 years we filed for all the IP. A year and a half we started the production, or at least the development of it. So the Gen 3 it's really cool. So we're basically taking what the really expensive units do, but we're making it affordable and making it compact. So with our Gen 3 product, we have 2 forms. Or 2 models rather. We have one that's for the consumer, and one that's for the health professional clinician. The one for the consumer, it's pretty basic. It is electronic. They're both electronic. But it will measure LOP for you, for the customer, for the consumer, or the patient, or the athlete. All they have to do is put the percentage of LOP that they want the cuff to be at. The machine will do the rest. It's a digital screen. It's an LED screen. It's like a cell phone basically. So it's very easy to operate and to use. And that's pretty much the extent of the consumer model. It's very basic. There's not much going on. But we did that purposely so it's not overwhelming for the consumer or the patient. It's, you know, 3 steps and they're done. It inflates within 45 seconds as far as finding LOP and setting that percentage. So it's very quick, very efficient, and not clunky. There's also a manual mode on the consumer model. You can just set whatever pressure you want if you already know your pressure from a previous session. However, the system will sense if it reaches occlusion. So, you know, some people, a lot of patients be like, well, 60% of LOP was good, 90% must be amazing. And obviously we know that's not the case. It could potentially be dangerous. So if it senses occlusion at any point in time, it will shut off. It will deflate and shut off, and then tell you to, you know, reset. It's kind of just a built-in safety mechanism, because a lot of times, and what Ed was talking about before, is a lot of physical therapists, athletic trainers, and clinicians in general, they rent out or send home they send their patients cuffs, you know, sets to take home to do on their own. So this way it's safe for the patients that don't have the medical knowledge, that they can do it safely and effectively.
So that consumer model, if I had a student that wanted to buy them, they could just buy them from you?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So all of our units right now, except the Pro model, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can just buy right off the website. We did that because my deep hatred for companies that, I'm sorry, hatred is a strong word, but my firm dislike for companies that require their special certification courses to purchase products. You know, we there's no reason, if it's in your scope of practice, there's no reason why you should have a certification course. It's obviously highly recommended we highly recommend our courses so you're using it safely and optimally. With all of our units, you get the contraindication list, you get the general basics on how to operate it safely and effectively for any type of patient. But we don't require a certification course. That was rampant in the ISTM soft tissue world, and it's kind of was with the BFR as well for a while, and I hated that. I just didn't like it. So it wasn't very democratic. So my biggest thing was options and flexibility. So with the Gen 3 product, that being said, we only sell the Gen 3 Pro model to health professionals. We don't require a course, but we only sell it to health professionals because it has the ischemic preconditioning modes that Ed talked about before, which is fully occluding the limb and then releasing, fully occluding the limb and releasing for pre-event and post-event purposes. That's why we only sell it to health professionals, so because they know what they're doing. We don't want to put this into the hands of somebody that can just fully occlude and then they don't know what they're doing, and it's a safety thing and a liability issue. So the Gen 3 Pro model, it is option. So it can do what our current Gen 2 model does and the consumer model will do. Basically, you click it on, you set the pressure, the LOP percentage, and then disconnect, and then you're good to go. Or for the people that like to have that auto regulation of pressure, you keep it connected and the unit will auto regulate pressure within the safe or the LOP range that is deemed safe by the research. So for instance, for your lower extremity, if you put it on the leg and you keep it connected and you say, yes, I want to auto regulate pressure during this exercise, you keep it connected and it will keep pressure within 60 to 80% of LOP.
So if
done and done.
Is it possible, I guess, to recharge? I'm going to set it up and I'm going to go do an exercise and then I'm going to come back and plug them back in and make sure it's still good and then go back and do the exercise again. Is that an option?
As far as, say that again. So say are you auto regulating pressure or you set the pressure to the LP and then disconnect?
Well, that's kind of what I'm asking is
sure.
So say I have the unit in the athletic training room sitting on the counter and I have 4 sets of cuffs. So I want the kids to go in the hallway and do walking, like I said. So, okay, I want you to go walk 2 laps, come back. We're going to hook it back up, make sure the pressure's still good. And then you're going to walk another 2 laps and walk another 2 laps and that kind of thing. Is that possible or does it either have to be auto-regulated or standalone?
Well, you can do either or. So if you set the pressure, the cuff is designed to hold that pressure. So if you set it to 50% LOP, it's going to stay at 50% LOP. The valve system that we have on there is designed to keep all that pressure. And if they go walk around and you go back into connect it again to check, it's actually going to be less air because you're opening the port. So if you open the port, air is going to come out, and it's going to show less pressure because you just opened the port to check the pressure. So you can inflate it at a time, but the system will deflate it and then reset to either manual mode where you can apply that same pressure from before, or you just do the LOP mode where it will do it for you.
Okay. So essentially it's designed to do either stay connected or fill up and walk away.
Correct. Yeah. Either or. Right before, so it will set the LOP percentage for you. And then once you have that pressure, right before you start the session, it will say, do you want to auto-regulate or not? If you want to auto-regulate, you press yes, and then it says keep connected, and then off you go. If you don't, then it says disconnect. You disconnect it, and then off you go and exercise.
Gotcha. All right. So I kind of jumped in there, but continue.
Sure. So the biggest question we get is, what's the battery life on it? And is it compatible with Gen 2? The answer is lithium-ion battery. The biggest drawback to current auto-regulation systems is they use a nickel-cad battery, mainly for shipping purposes. Big drawback to the nickel-cad is that the battery will burn out after a year or so. It's very expensive, and it self-discharges. So we use a lithium-ion battery. It has a longer charge on it, and it has a longer battery life. It doesn't self-discharge. And as far as compatibility goes, we did not change the valve system between our Gen 2 and Gen 3. So the connectors on the Gen 3 pumps will work on the Gen 2 cuffs, right? So it's not a closed end-to-end system. So we get that a lot because we have a lot of customers from our Gen 2 products. They're like, can I just buy the pump and then use it on my Gen 2 cuffs? I'm like, yeah, that's why we designed it this way. So people don't have to buy all new sets again. We're not Apple. Like everything's got to be closed end to end. It's like, okay, my iPhone 8, I need an iPhone 9 now because my software is just not up to. No, it's everything's compatible with one another.
Gotcha. All right, so mention looking at the high school athletic training room where I might have, we have 2 Compex units. We're trying to order some more because that was something that was affordable, something we could even possibly send home with an athlete post surgery, that kind of thing. And so the smart cuffs, if it's something we invest in come next school year budget, what is going to be your best selling package, right, for us to use in a high school athletic training room?
Sure. Yeah. So if it's for the athletic training room where they're taking it home with them, that would be more so the consumer model. And right now, those are pre-order anywhere from $199 to $299. So pretty damn affordable considering the objectivity and the evidence-based nature of the product, considering the competition that's out there. Generally, it's going to be in 300 to 400 for a comparable product, but those are not computerized. Those are just still the sphygmometer hand pump into a cuff, kind of like what our Gen 2 is. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. It's just a little clunky, and it's not as easy to use for those athletes. So that would be my recommendation. Would be the Gen 3 pump or the Gen 3 set to have them to take home with them. We would treat those athletes as patients, so it's much easier for them to use. So the pre-order now is $199 for the 2 cuffs and pump. Once the pre-order is over, it's going to go to $299. But you're still under $400. You can get a full set.
All right. So what does the full set look like?
Full set for the consumer model would be 2 cuffs for the upper extremity and 2 cuffs for the lower. So you get 4 cuffs total and a pump. And then for the professional model, there's 2 sets. There's 6 cuffs plus the pump for the pro. So 6 cuffs. So you get a pair of cuffs for each size. There's 3 sizes. And then the other set is 12 cuffs. So you get 2 pairs of each size plus the pump.
Okay, so looking at the consumer model, you said there's an upper extremity and a lower extremity cuffs.
Yeah.
You could potentially hook up the cuffs to your legs, set them, and then hook up the cuffs to your arms, set them, and then do whatever workout you're doing.
Correct. Yeah, if you not for auto regulation mode though, unless you have two pumps. We never, under any circumstance, recommend to do all 4 limbs at the same time. We state that in our quick start guide. We state that in our courses. We state that on our social media because we see it a lot, and it's not safe. It's not evidence-based at all. I know there's some research going on out there that's coming in the next 6 to 12 months. Supposedly, I don't know how much coronavirus has affected it at all, but there's some research going to be coming out showing the lack of safety on all 4 cuffs. So we're not proponents of it. We give you we have that option. So if you want to go do an upper extremity workout, okay, then you have 2 cuffs. You can do bilateral. If you want to go do a lower extremity workout, you have 2 cuffs. They're at your disposal, but it's not meant to be used